Welcome to the Law Offices of Chris M. Ingram podcast. Today we're covering the story of Maria Alvarez, not her real name, who had to flee her home country to save the lives of her children. Her story is titled The Long Walk North. And welcome to this deep dive. We're really going to unpack an incredibly compelling human story today. We'll be taking a pretty detailed look at Maria Alvarez's journey, and this is all based on the extensive interviews done by attorney Chris Ingram and his team. Our goal really is to give you a clear understanding of the complex, often, harrowing realities of seeking asylum. We'll touch on some unexpected challenges, moments of incredible resilience you might not expect. It's a story that really stays with you.
Absolutely. And what's so revealing about our legal team's interview with Maria, The Long Walk North, as it's titled, is the perspective it offers. It's deeply personal, very crucial for understanding immigration. We're not just, listing events. It's about understanding the human impact, connecting Maria's specific experience to the bigger picture, the huge challenges so many people face navigating these dangerous journeys, and frankly, incredibly complex legal systems. This deep dive, we hope, will give you some real insights, a thorough understanding, but without, burying you in information.
Okay, so let's start this journey. Our team's interview begins in Santa Rosa, Honduras, Maria's village. It was May 2024. And that's when the notorious MS-13 gang, known, worldwide for extortion, murder, just shattered her life. Her husband, Javier, he was a humble mechanic. He refused to pay their protection fee. He insisted every single cent was for their kids, Sofia, who is 10, and Diego, just 6 years old.
And that defiance, tragically, marked him.
Yeah.
And this is where the grim reality of gangs like MS-13 really hits home. Our attorneys found that in places like Honduras, police forces are often compromised. So families like Maria's, they're left completely defenseless, utterly vulnerable. The interview describes masked men, midnight, breaking down their door, dragging Javier into the street.
Oh, God.
And then the finality of gunshots. By dawn, Javier was dead, bullet through his chest. And a chilling note pinned to Maria's door. Leave or your children die next.
That's just devastating. She knew staying meant certain death. There was no police force she could possibly trust. So she packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, $300, a faded photo of Javier, her mother's rosary. She whispered to her children, "We're going to America, a place where we'll be safe." She'd heard about asylum, this idea of legal protection for people fleeing persecution and refugees, people escaping similar dangers.
Right, and it's interesting, her initial understanding of those terms, asylum and refugee, it's actually quite common. Attorney Chris Ingram's team highlights this. She later learned a really crucial distinction. Asylum is usually applied for within the U.S. or right at the border. Refugees, on the other hand, they're typically vetted, granted status overseas before they even enter the country.
Oh, okay. That's a key difference.
Huge difference. And it would profoundly shape her journey later on, but back then, her single goal, unwavering, was just get to the U.S., the land she believed could shield her family.
So she starts this grueling 2,000-mile journey. Honduras through Guatemala into Mexico. She joined a small group, about 10 people, pooling their, meager funds for some safety in numbers, mostly walking, taking buses, constantly dodging checkpoints, Sofia clinging to her doll, Diego clinging to Maria, always asking, "When will we get there, Mama?" Maria, rationing food, trying so hard to hide her own terror. What does the research tell us about just the sheer toll of that, physically, mentally?
Oh, our team's study paints a truly harrowing picture. Beyond the immediate physical dangers Maria faced, the muddy jungle trails in Guatemala, the rain, wildlife like a snake near Diego at one point. It's the grinding, relentless psychological pressure that takes an immense toll. Then in Mexico, new dangers, coyotes, human smugglers demanding $600 per person. Maria traded her wedding ring, a piece of her history. Javier's beloved tools, each item just a piece of her past torn away.
Wow.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What desperation drives someone to sacrifice absolutely everything they own just for this fragile chance at safety?
And the dangers just kept escalating. Our attorneys detail cartel roadblocks, armed men, brutal beatings for those who couldn't pay. Maria hid her last $150 in Diego's tiny shoe. The heat was merciless. Diego got a fever. She traded her last bracelet just for medicine. Bandits, corrupt police, kidnappings, constant threats. One woman in their group, Clara, just vanished one day, gone.
Yep.
Finally, after 7 grueling weeks, they reach Ciudad Juarez, across from El Paso, Texas. This is July 2024. But reaching the border, that wasn't the end of the struggle, was it?
No, not at all. In fact, what our team uncovered is how often that very promise of freedom at the border can be, deceptive.
Maria arrived with blistered feet, exhausted, and now carrying a new burden, a $3,000 debt to that coyote.
She'd heard about a Department of Homeland Security app, the DHS app, for asylum appointments, but it was completely unavailable to her.
Right.
And this really underscores a critical barrier. The lack of accessible legal pathways often forces people into these incredibly dangerous informal routes. So on a starless July night, they waded through the Rio Grande. It was icy cold. The coyote just abandoned them there. Hours later, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP agents, found them. And Maria immediately pleaded, right? They killed my husband, they'll kill my children. Clutching that crumpled MS-13 death threat. She knew everything. Her family's entire future hung in the balance right there, on the riverbank.
Absolutely. And our legal team describes how CBP processed them under these strict policies that, typically barred asylum claims if you didn't have a prior appointment. However, Maria's credible fear of persecution triggered by Javier's murder, the specific threat against her kids that led to an initial interview. In this stark room, an asylum officer, despite being overworked, clearly stretched thin, deemed her fear credible, and that was a rare, crucial exception. It saved them from immediate deportation right then and there.
So, instead of detention, our interviewers tell us CBP released Maria and her kids with a notice to appear, an NTA, which is basically a document ordering a court appearance, but is set for April 2027.
Nearly 3 years away.
Yeah, almost 3 years away because of the massive backlog in the immigration courts. And they put ankle monitors tracked by ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement on Maria and Sofia. Her release, given that ICE had deported thousands, it felt like an incredible stroke of luck.
It really was. And what Maria's release highlights, unfortunately, is the sheer randomness sometimes present in the system. It wasn't just luck, perhaps, but also a system stretched so incredibly thin that its capacity often dictates fate more than specific policy nuances in that moment. And that ankle monitor, a constant tether, it was this stark reminder of how freedom, quote unquote, in this context, can still feel like a kind of controlled limbo. As they boarded a bus to Los Angeles, Maria just clutched that NTA, a fragile lifeline to a future she couldn't possibly see clearly yet.
So once they got to Los Angeles, Maria and the children moved into a one-bedroom apartment with Elena, a friend who was a lawful permanent resident, a nurse. The city's sanctuary policies offered, a fragile shield, but that constant fear of ICE raids or undocumented status, it just cast a shadow over every single moment, always checking those ankle monitors, a constant hum of anxiety.
And that's a critical point, how her undocumented status profoundly dictated her daily life. That NTA offered a temporary reprieve, sure, but the distant April 2027 court date was her only real hope. A failed asylum claim meant deportation, straight back to Honduras, where MS-13's threat was still very real. Our attorneys emphasize how many humanitarian protections had either been dismantled or just weren't applicable, like the CH&V parole program.
Right, for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela.
Exactly. It offered temporary legal entry work authorization, but it critically excluded Hondurans like Maria.
And temporary protected status, TPS, that grants work authorization, protection from deportation for people from countries facing conflict or disaster.
Also not an option for her. She couldn't meet the continuous residency requirements for Honduras under TPS.
And our team also highlights this new DHS registration requirement, started in April 2024. It forced undocumented immigrants like Maria to register, which ironically kind of increased the risk of detention, right? Yeah. She registered, but reluctantly, after hearing about it at San Miguel Church.
Yeah, it raises this really important question about balancing enforcement with genuine humanitarian concerns. Plus, the nationwide expansion of expedited removal, this process, allowing immigration officials to quickly deport certain non-citizens without a formal hearing if they haven't been in the U.S. very long, that kept Maria constantly on edge. Her only solid proof of persecution was that crumpled MS-13 note.
Just that one piece of paper.
But there was a glimmer of hope. The ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project was actively challenging these policies, which Maria learned about at a legal clinic.
So without a work permit, Maria had to turn to the informal economy, cleaning houses in wealthy neighborhoods, cash jobs, earning maybe $12, $15 an hour. And our legal team details how ICE raids routinely targeted those exact sectors. There was a raid at a nearby restaurant, detained 60 workers, that sent terrifying ripples of fear through her community. How did that constant threat impact her daily routine?
Oh, profoundly. It just underscores the extreme vulnerability of undocumented workers. I mean, they contribute billions annually to the U.S. economy, but live in this constant state of fear. Maria had to rely on Elena's network, carefully vetting clients to avoid exploitation or, worse, being reported. No social security number meant no formal jobs, no benefits, just cash payments. Her day started at 4:30 a.m., her body aching, always listening for news of raids, avoiding public transit because she feared checkpoints. Every single action was a calculation for safety.
Rome, 20,000 spectators, one epic battle, two warriors, one destiny. But before they can fight for glory, they must face the real challenge, getting their visa approved.
If you want to enter, show me your visa.
They should have went to the law offices of Chris M. Ingram. They are very good.
Yes, I've heard the same. They handled my visa in no time.
Off to the Lions pit.
Come with me, boys. It's dinner time.
Because even legends need the offices of Chris M. Ingram.
Are you looking for a visa? Why don't you get your free consultation on the Breakthrough website? We're with you every step of the way.
And the impact on the kids.
Yeah.
Sophia, the 10-year-old, she's doing great in school, but she internalized all this anxiety. She'd avoid school activities that they require parental ID, lying awake, clutching her doll, listening for sirens.
Yeah.
Diego, quieter since his father's death, drew pictures of Javier. His nightmares were filled with these shadowy men in black vests. He'd ask Maria, "Will they take you, Mama?" Just heartbreaking.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Even with the promise of American public education, a child's dreams can just hit this invisible wall. Not because of lack of talent or effort, but purely because of a bureaucratic status completely beyond their control. Public schools offered some stability, yes, but their undocumented status barred them from federal aid, like Pell Grants, which threatened Sophia's dream of becoming a teacher, Diego's hope of being a doctor.
Wow.
Maria nurtured those hopes, reading to Diego about stars, helping Sophia with algebra, but that constant fear of separation. It just clung like a shadow, a systemic kind of heartbreak.
Maria explored every legal path she could find, but the options were just incredibly scarce. Asylum really remained her strongest chance, which meant proving this well-founded fear of persecution based on things like family membership, because MS-13 targeted her after Javier's death. But that requires extensive evidence and critically skilled legal representation.
And the reality was, well, daunting. Asylum approval rates were low. Stricter vetting made success increasingly unlikely. Anna, a volunteer lawyer at San Miguel Church's legal clinic, thankfully took Maria's case pro bono. But resources were stretched so thin. Other options. Humanitarian parole, DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals. They either didn't apply to Maria's situation or were just far too uncertain given their shifting legal status.
Right.
Even the DREAM Act, that proposed bill offering a pathway to status for undocumented youth, it had failed to pass Congress, leaving millions without relief. It really makes you wonder, how can a system be both comprehensive and compassionate for people in such desperate circumstances?
So Maria pinned all her hopes on Asylum. She met weekly with Anna, painstakingly gathering affidavits, evidence. But danger was always looming. Rosa, another mother from her support group at San Miguel Church, whispered this chilling warning one day. ICE was planning a raid on their neighborhood's cleaning agency, the very one Maria relied on for work.
That's just a terrifying prospect, and this leads us to a really pivotal, heartbreaking moment in Maria's story, doesn't it?
Yeah. On a crisp June morning, June 2025, Maria got up at 4:30 a.m. for her cleaning job, kissed Sophia and Diego goodbye. They were laughing, playing a game of loteria. That sound probably warmed her heart. She was focused on earning $90 for Sophia's school supplies, her growing legal fees. That ankle monitor, just a cold, quiet reminder of ICE's watchful eye.
And what our legal team describes next is the suddenness of it, the almost clinical precision of the raid. 8:15 a.m., chaos erupts, shouting, "Immigration and Customs Enforcement, nobody move!" Men in black vests stormed in. Maria froze, heart pounding. Her first and only thought, Sophia and Diego, alone at school. An agent zip-tied her wrists. Her monitor beeped faintly. She was herded into a van with 12 others, their faces just etched with terror, all heading towards an uncertain fate.
Our attorneys note that these ICE raids, they're authorized under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Meticulously planned operations. Maria's apprehension was part of a broader sweep, even though her job was cash-based, no formal employer records. Her compliance with that April 2024 DHS registration actually spared her a misdemeanor charge, but it obviously didn't prevent her detention.
No, and this really underscores the harsh realities of these enforcement mechanisms. Maria was transported to the Adelanto ICE processing center, a large detention facility. There, ICE agents photographed her, took her fingerprints, reviewed her NTA, confirming her pending asylum case. Her NTA marked her as removable, yes, but also potentially eligible for release, which was a critical factor later. But still, those sterile halls, they felt very much like a cage.
Detention was absolutely a cage of uncertainty. She was strip-searched, a deeply humiliating ordeal. Given a blue jumpsuit, placed in a dorm with 50 other women, she clutched her small bag, that MS-13 note, the NTA inside. Her only leverage. Her thoughts just raced to Sofia and Diego, now in Elena's care. Sofia's tearful voice over the phone, "Mama, come back." It just haunted Maria, a constant ache.
This deeply personal account from our attorneys, it reveals the profound emotional harm of these policies. Detention became this legal limbo. While her NTA and that credible fear-finding protected her from expedited removal, that quick deportation without a hearing detainees could still be held indefinitely. The Flores settlement from 1997, that's a federal court agreement setting standards for detaining and releasing migrant kids. Well, it's meant to limit the time children are held, but it didn't prevent Maria's separation from her children because she was detained alone.
Right.
And our team's study details the harsh conditions at Adelanto. Overcrowding, limited medical care, verbal abuse, all just compounding the trauma she'd already endured.
Fortunately, Maria's NTA did offer several pathways to release. Anna, her volunteer lawyer, visited 2 days after the arrest. Her presence must have been just a flicker of desperately needed hope. Anna outlined the options. A bond hearing seemed like the most feasible route to freedom. The judge at that hearing would assess Maria's flight risk and any potential danger to the community.
And this is where the vital role of community truly shines through in the interview. Anna planned to argue Maria's deep ties to Sofia and Diego, their complete dependence on her as their sole caregiver. But a bond, it requires a significant payment, often thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But San Miguel Church had a bond fund, supported by community donations. That offered a crucial ray of hope. Other options, like parole from detention, the chances were slim due to tightened criteria. And a habeas corpus petition, that's a legal maneuver challenging unlawful detention, that was really a desperate last resort. So Anne immediately filed a motion for a bond hearing with the Los Angeles Immigration Court, gathering powerful support letters from Father Miguel and Sofia's teacher.
The emotional toll in detention must have been immense. Maria lying awake, imagining her children's tears. During one brief visit, through glass partition, Sofia pressed her small hand to the glass, whispering, "Mama, when are you coming home?" Diego, his eyes red, swollen, barely spoke. Maria forced a smile, had to lie. "Soon, mis amores. Soon, my loves." The 20-minute visit ended way too soon.
And our legal team study also looks at the struggles outside Adelanto. Elena, Maria's friend, struggling to shield Sofia and Diego from the full weight of their mother's absence. Sofia refused to eat. Her grades started slipping. Diego started wetting the bed regularly. Elena leaned heavily on the San Miguel community. They organized meals, vigils. Anna, meanwhile, worked late nights, totally overwhelmed with her pro bono caseload, but her resolve to help Maria was unshaken.
That raid had processed 45 workers, detained 30, including Maria. It sent shockwaves through East Los Angeles. Families kept kids home from school. Local businesses faced huge disruptions. Maria's cleaning agency, terrified of more raids, fired all its undocumented workers. That economic toll just echoed nationally.
Exactly. And this situation ignited widespread outrage. Activists protested outside Adelanto. The ACLU even included Maria's case in a detailed report on family separations, drawing national attention. Local news covered the protests, but ICE remained unmoved, just strictly adhering to policy. While the community's support definitely reached Maria through Anna, her ultimate fate still hinged entirely on that bond hearing. One moment that could restore her freedom or just cement that heartbreaking separation.
Okay, so let's turn to that glimmer of hope. June 15th, 2025, Maria stands before an immigration judge. Anna presents this meticulous case. Maria's NTA, the harrowing MS-13 death threat, those compelling letters from Father Miguel Rosa, Sofia's teacher, all testifying to Maria's unwavering devotion as a mother, her deep community ties. ICE's attorney, predictably, argued Maria was a flight risk.
But this is really where Maria's own resilience, reflected through Anna's advocacy, shone brightest. Anna passionately countered, describing Sofia and Diego's utter dependence on their mother. Their emotional, physical well-being was at stake. Sofia had even written her own letter. A simple, heartfelt plea. It lay right there on the judge's bench. The judge, looking visibly tired, paused and then declared, This is a mother who fled unimaginable violence to protect her children. Her profound ties to the community and her pending asylum case outweigh the government's concerns.
Wow.
Maria's release on bond was granted, and the payment, covered entirely by San Miguel Church's bond fund. Community power right there.
Tears just streamed down Maria's face. Lana whispered, "You're going home." That evening, Maria left Adelanto, wrists finally free of restraints. At Alina's apartment, she was reunited with Sofia and Diego. Their embraces were fierce, unbroken. The kids laughed, eating tamales. Just a simple melody of joy Maria feared she'd never hear again.
And that reunion, while deeply joyful, it really marked a new, fragile beginning. Maria had to rebuild her life, cautiously. The cleaning agency had closed, so she had to find new work, mostly babysitting for cash. Always aware of the possibility of ICE raids. Her new ankle monitor, though a sign of conditional freedom, was still a constant weight, a reminder. Our legal team details how Elena's unwavering support was crucial, but Maria yearned for independence, saving every single dollar she could.
Sofia and Diego went back to school. Their resilience, just a quiet miracle. Sofia continued excelling in art and math. Her teacher already saw college potential. Diego played soccer. His coach called him a little champion. But the trauma lingered, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Sofia would often check the apartment door at night. Diego would still ask, "Will they take you again, Mama?"
Yeah.
It really highlights the deep psychological impact that persists, even after physical release. And their undocumented status still barred them from federal financial aid, like Pell Grants, casting that shadow over their college dreams. Maria, she nurtured those hopes fiercely, reading to Diego about astronauts, helping Sofia with science projects. San Miguel Church remained her anchor, support groups, English classes constantly striving, and the ACLU's ongoing lawsuits challenging asylum restrictions, they echoed her fight, offering that glimmer of broader change.
But Maria continues to face these unrelenting risks. ICE could strike again. Missing a check-in, violating her ankle monitor's conditions that could trigger redetention. And if her asylum claim ultimately fails, deportation looms, risking permanent, irreversible separation from her children.
Exactly. Her April 2027 asylum hearing before an immigration judge, that is her final critical chance. She has to prove that well-founded fear of persecution, specifically based on family membership, because MS-13 targeted her family after killing Javier. Anna will present Javier's death certificate, the MS-13 note, compelling affidavits. Maria, maybe even Sofia, will have to testify, and ICE attorneys can, and often do, challenge the claim vigorously, questioning every detail, her credibility.
If approved, Maria and her children would finally receive legal protection from deportation, eligibility for work authorization, a critical step towards stability, some semblance of normalcy. If denied, she could appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, but that's a grueling process, no guaranteed success.
But if asylum is granted,
then they could apply for lawful permanent residency, a green card 1 year later, and eventually U.S. citizenship, finally finding true safety.
What we found particularly revealing in Maria's story, looking at the interviews from Chris's team, is how her hope, though it's often so fragile, it's continually nurtured. Nurtured by her children's incredible resilience and the profound embrace of their community. Sofia's vibrant sketches, Diego's joyful soccer games, Maria's diligent English classes, these are all these quiet testaments to their enduring spirit. She continues to pray, whispering to Javier's photo, "We'll make it." Her resolve fueled by her children's dreams, dreams of teaching, dreams of healing.
Maria's Odyssey really reminds us that behind every statistic, every policy debate, there's a profound human story of perseverance and vulnerability. What does her journey tell us about our own capacity for empathy and action in the face of immense global challenges? Thank you so much for being with us today. Make sure you follow up for the next installment of Maria's Journey. Once again, we would like to thank attorney Chris Ingram and his team for researching and preparing this material for our presentation today. They are doing an awesome job. You can also follow us on YouTube under Let's Talk U.S. Immigration, as we're developing a significant following there.